Good afternoon, Shamsuddin. This time you managed to understand the time zone difference. Shamsuddin is from, he's again been a regular on these the Living Building series sessions. Dr. Anchuri is here. Good afternoon. Okay, so we are almost there. I think we should get started. Well, thank you, all of you. Good afternoon to you once again. Thank you for being here today. I am myself looking forward to a great deal of learning from these two wonderful human beings who have committed. Well, Niranjan has dedicated nearly 40 years plus for understanding in a very intuitive way what greening or natural resource efficiency is about. For him, I mean, he comes from a time when green was just another word for a color. Umashankar has spent some very lovely years, and I shall introduce you to him soon enough. But good evening, Umashankar. Would you want to say something briefly in one or two lines as to what you expect from this session today of about an hour plus that we are all going to be together, and what you seek to offer to the students?
Yeah. What we understand from sustainability is it's quite a complex term to understand. When somebody says, okay, you're sustainable, does it really mean that they're all doing very good? We don't know what is the range of scale. So here we have Mr. Niranjan Khatri talking with his experience and his knowledge about how to simplify this communication of sustainability. Where do you stand and how you can improve? Right. So that's a nutshell. That is, it gives an indication of where you stand on the sustainability scale.
Sure, nice and precise. Niranjan, what do you expect from the students and the other attendees? Many of them are professionals themselves. And what do you seek to offer to them? You know, in a minute or so, could you tell us before we begin formal proceedings?
Yeah, today there is a plethora of information available. As a matter of fact, we are drowning in information, but we're looking for wisdom. And instead of analyzing the information more and more, I think it's time for us to get into action right from home level itself. Because when you bring about efficiencies in various areas at home, there are opportunities which will help us to bring down the consumption of resources at a national and a global level. Unfortunately, I don't see much of this at the micro level. And there's an old adage, drops of water make an ocean. So I hope people will get into action.
Right. Sure. I see that. Okay. To all of you there, let me set the context for what we're discussing today. And as I said, there is, I think, a great deal of learning I'm looking forward to myself. If you are talking about iconic India innovations, you need to understand how ideas that come ground up from people who are working on the floor lead to ideations of certain kinds and innovations that become, shall we say, practical, functional solutions for buildings. If you're greening up your company, you'll quickly realize there is an awful lot of data that needs logging and storing in order to work out how your company is performing. We are slowly getting there in terms of measuring, mapping, managing, and so on. You also will want to use such data in a structured way, which is where toolkits come in handy, allowing you to see how you can bring total clarity and productivity in all those efforts on sustainability that you want to bring in a building. Your data usually is expensive. If you're running a large facility, for instance, of 1 million square feet, and let us say it's a technology park, or it is a factory, an automobile factory of, let us say, 5 lakh square feet. The data that you acquire is expensive to create because the time your team utilizes comes at a cost. It's important, therefore, that this data gets stored safely and is always accessible for managers to see what they want to bring in as analysis and therefore corrections and decision making. Sometimes data is easier to secure, alerts upon which you can take decisions if there is a quick way of arriving at such priorities with what is called coding. It's always great if you can show the organization's sustainability progress to the team over a few months with such coding in terms of colors that you use. Equally, it can be of great help when you have reporting available because it allows you to easily identify areas of strength and of weakness. How do we get built-in reporting? In your programs in semester, I would think 3, 4, and 5, and 6, you read a little bit about reporting, especially on construction, if you're students of architecture. If you're students of civil engineering or mechanical engineering, you get to understanding some bits of it in year 3, I would think. Now, how do we get built-in reporting which is available across all environments and components of work, giving extensive overview capabilities? That is what a manager needs to have. Someday soon, 8 years, 10 years from now, you're going to be managers of buildings. How does a building reduce its pollution and its carbon footprint is the larger question that we all seek to, of course, address. Is there a scheme you can employ that grades activities based on their environmental impact? Something that allows you to target tasks which bring the most immediate and profound benefits to your buildings in terms of energy use or water consumption or even waste that you generate. How do you work across multiple sites within a company is another question. If you are set in a campus of say 10 or 12 acres and you have, let's say, 5,000 employees, there are multiple sites. And with each site having its own set of standards and criteria, depending upon what that work environment dictates or demands. Can all this be controlled from multiple sites or from a central location? How do you keep the whole process straightforward? What Niranjan will present today, Niranjan Khatri will present today on color coding will help you understand how it makes everything much more intuitive. You'll see how when he presents, and he has presented some 200, 250 times over just the last say 7, 8 years. He's a tireless guy, you'll see that, and he's a dear friend. How it instantly flags up items where speedy resolution is necessary and something that saves money across a range of assets and applications in energy, in water, in waste and air management, especially if you're a centrally air-conditioned building, is another thing that really matters when it comes to coding for sustainability. The nice thing about color coding is that it enables at a glance progress. It's very, as I said, intuitive, and it's very simple in use, of course, for people who are custodians in an organization in terms of management and operations. I must say more than a few words on the special invitee for the day. He's a very mild-mannered and soft-spoken professional. He's as powerful and aggressive in the analysis he presents on a variety of policy and industry matters. You must read some of those sections or some of those features that he has written in the past. It will show up on your chat box soon enough. He's currently a senior consultant in energy analytics and in a leading software company. His professional experience is deep in manufacturing, in research and consulting, in areas of energy, audits of water and energy, industrial Internet of Things or IoT, and so on. You will see much of it in the profiles that we are listing out there. Interesting man. He spent time at the Center for Science and Environment, CSE in Delhi, doing extensive research between 2008 or 9 until about 2012 or so. And some of the work that he has done there is phenomenal. I've known him for some time, but last evening I sat and read those links that we have offered you right now on the chat box. And I told myself, this is probably one of the first 20 or 30 green economy innovators today in the country. His writings are truly impressive, and I would rate him among, as I said, the top green economy thinkers of contemporary India. Our master mentor of the day, Niranjan Khatri, has first been a friend of very long years. He has spent some 40 plus years. He forgets it himself. I think it's 43 or 44 years in one hotel from 1974. And he was telling me the story another day when he actually literally walked into a building in Bombay that seemed inviting with a nice board and asked for a job. He got it. He stayed on. But even if it seems boring to have spent so many years in one company, he made every day and month of his his life there interesting with things he invented from out of nothing, out of necessity, he will tell you in modesty. but out of, I think, a very sheer instinctive sense of responding to unique innovations and possibility for living. And that is what he will talk to you about also. Like he said earlier, he likes to see how, like charity, things begin right at home and at your workplace. What I admire most about him is that he really walks his talk. He uses a very modest car, lives frugally in a simple, functional home with absolutely no ostentation. He has 2 daughters who are extraordinary for the commitment and purpose they bring to their lives. His second daughter runs something called curiosity.com. Instead of the second, instead of S in the curiosity, you replace it with a C, and there you go. You'll find this wonderful site and the powerful, dedicated work a young team of people are doing out there. She is based out of Bombay. Niranjan is working out of Bangalore. Umashankar is also based in Bangalore. Even as Niranjan worked on this presentation of today over several hours, he was humble and ever willing to change on feedback he got. He's lived this act of bringing change in the young. And the opportunity to speak to all of you students today, he sees as a rare privilege, always has seen it. He loves to connect with young minds. What do you learn from him and how you use it in your life and at work is up to all of you today. You'll see on the chat box the numbers of things that he's been associated with over a quarter century. He resides in Bangalore, as I said. He spent many years in Delhi. He spent some time in the Andaman Nicobar Islands. He will tell you about that. Please read the notes we sent you. We have sent so far on the chat box, while we will request you to confine yourself to all your comments and observations on the Q&A. And I'm hoping, my last sentence is, I'm hoping that you have all read the reference reading that was sent to you earlier. I'm sure your faculty has mentored you. I can see Professor Kaustubh and others from Cuttack, and I'm sure that they guided you all into how you understand while you prepare for sessions of this kind at the Living Building series. Shankar, I'd like you to take over and see if you can offer us some 4 or 5 minutes of what you see as such digitalization with simple codes that people down the line understand in terms of the effectiveness of O&M for organizations, of operations and maintenance for organizations. Over to you, Uma.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Hariharan, and welcome all. I'll just start with my introduction on digitalization for energy and environment. Let me talk about an anecdote, what I had experienced over the last 6 months. So we had digitalized an industry in a foods factory, and it was a pretty large foods factory with quite a lot of water consumption, significant water consumption. So when we started digitalizing all the information and getting the data onto the head office, thereafter we realized surprisingly that out of the total water consumption in the factory, domestic water consumption, that is the water used for your canteen and washrooms, was almost 50% of the total plant water use. So what did we do? We then analyzed this, we took it to the management and said, see, here is the problem, that you have a huge water consumption. And then when we went and analyzed the domestic water consumption, where is it? We found that canteens are using the old style taps, where there is a huge amount of water wastage. They press it and then it takes almost 30 seconds for the water to be switched off. It's the automatic button tap. So immediately this was flagged off as one of the big problems. And the plant changed the water taps immediately. And we were able to find almost 80% reduction in water consumption. This also helped in reducing, interestingly, close to 5.5 lakh rupees for the water bill, water and electricity bill. So your sewage treatment plant, which was running at very high load earlier, now has come down significantly because of the demand reduction of water itself. So this is just one example of how data has helped in environment. It has enlightened the management, the staff, that here is a problem which is there. Here is a big problem and it needs to be identified. So let me just take you just 2 steps back. So how data analysis and digitalization helps. So what do we call by digitalization? So here it's nothing but the definition of digitalization. There's quite a lot available in the internet, And one of the key digital definitions is the connection between the physical systems or equipments and the digital world. It's just not the connection, but you need to transform your business operations. So it is also to transform the business operations. It is not just not connecting it and then showing it, but you need to transform it. You need to use that information, the actionable insights, and then take some control. I think I can share some more case studies, what I have, and that will give a good idea. So we have been to a cement plant where there was a lot of this power plant, of course, is a very big energy consumption. And they had these Honeywell control systems. And that data lied in the control systems. They did not know the performance of the power plant. And they only had one shift every day, that is 3 times a day, that is after the shift. They had the performance evaluation done just on pen and paper. But then that was too late. And what we analyzed and implemented was, we took the information from the control system, that is the Honeywell DCS system, pulled it out from there, put it into a database, common database, contextualized all your data, and then we were able to come out with good insights of where the problem is occurring in the power plant. For example, it could be your feed water temperature is low, or it could be certain stack, that is a combustion parameters are going offline. And these are things which we were able to find out immediately. And this, we are empowering the management of the staff, the operating staff, the supervisors. We were able to give this information real time to them. So what I'm trying to say in terms of digitalization, in essence, is pulling out data from all of these equipments. Now, data, where does it lie? It could be lying in a sensor. It could be lying in some control systems like your PLCs, or it could be also in distributed control systems, your SCADA systems. For a large factory, it could be in a SCADA systems. So typically these kind of information lies in somewhere in certain areas, and you need to pull the data out and contextualize it and come out with certain formulas, equations, calculations. And once you do that, then there is a huge amount of insights which are available for taking action. Right. And what are the new IoT platforms which are running in the market right now? We have PTC ThinkWorks, we have Watson, we have SAP Leonardo, we have Microsoft Azure, and then we have Google Cloud. So there are a huge number of information available, and this information can be used by all the users, the stakeholders, the internal stakeholders, for taking some corrective actions. So how does digitalization really help? So what we have seen in many of these industries, if you go under the hood, that we find that there is a lack of real information, and most of the information is only in terms of spreadsheets, and they are done every day in terms of benchmarking, or maybe once a month. But what we need is for critical energy and environment related parameters, I think there is now, it's high time, and the cost of digitalization also has come down drastically. So we need to pull that data out from all of these energy and environmental assets and get it out to these stakeholders who are important, who are key decision makers. And that includes your all supervisors, managers, operators, so that they can take quick corrective actions. It could be available on their laptop desktops, or it could be also on their mobiles. So in essence, what we're trying to say from digitalization is similar to something what you have for your fitness apps, where if you put your fitness app on your mobile or on your watch, and you're able to track, okay, what is the progress, what you're doing. Similarly, for for energy and environment also, there's a huge scope. And when it comes to buildings, what we have also seen in terms of buildings is, even if you have all these solar, a lot of investments which are going on, like having a rooftop solar and so on and so forth. So there is a need for actually tracking out in terms of, it could be evaporative cooling for chillers, and a lot of capital investment is going on. But what we need actually from all of this right now is how are the existing assets and how the existing operations working. And that is where digitalization comes into picture. And the last piece what I want to tell before I hand it over to Mr. Khatri is, once we have the data available, we do something called data analytics. And data analytics, it comprises of 4 areas right now. It's called as descriptive. It's called as, that is descriptive is what is happening right now. The information should be available instantly, that is in terms real time. The next is called diagnostics. So where is the problem occurring? Which are the problems? So we can have some algorithms and codes for understanding, okay, which are the likely areas of a problem. So that's diagnostics. And if you want to predict what is the efficiency or the related performance, energy efficiency and related performance, so you have to have the third step, which is called as predictive analysis. And the fourth step is prescriptive. Prescriptive is, it says, okay, what you need to do to achieve the best performance. So these are the 4 stages of analytics which are there. And this all can be used, this industrial IoT, it's called Internet of Things, as well as data analytics can be used to empower all the users, the stakeholders, internal, external stakeholders, to take immediate actions on the performance, improve their performance, track it very clearly. So as Dr. Hariharan said, monitor, measure, map it, clearly contextualize it, and have a clear information of what is happening. So when we do all of this for multiple factories, for multiple buildings, for example, you can color code them very easily in terms of performance for messaging, for simple messaging. So how are the assets doing across many factories, whether it is good, bad. So we have color coding in terms of green, yellow, and red. That is how we do it, and we are able to give messaging of which performance the assets is good and bad. So color coding, of course, is used in dashboards. A lot of dashboards, alerts, and everything in terms of performance we can easily provide, and that's what digitalization eventually does. So this helps all the stakeholders to take corrective actions. So thank you from my side.
Now you will come back again after Niranjan presents.
Yeah.
To all of you, I know one half of the students here are architects. The rest of them will be engineers and, of course, working professionals. Much of what Uma was talking about, Uma Shankar was talking about just now, you might stop and ask yourself, hey, why am I actually learning all this? Why would I want to, learn at a deeper level things to do with such digitalization, as he calls it? I'm an architect. I need to work on aesthetics, on volume, on space, and on the spatial elements of a building. And it's the job of somebody else called an engineer who brings in such domains. This series, the attempt that this series is making is to help you or to sensitize you to things that go beyond the envelope. I know you're very good at the envelope itself if you're an architect, and I know you're very good at it, at the engineering elements of it that your faculty will have trained you upon if you are somebody from either the discipline of mechanical engineering or civil or electrical or even environmental engineering. Before I hand over to Niranjan, I will tell you this to all of you students, that today we have some very, as it has been every time, we have some very eminent people who are listening in, who are curious, who want to know how they can possibly recalibrate themselves as professionals. The president of the Indian Plumbing Association, D.O. Prasanna Kumar, is here. A very senior consultant of a Canadian university called Gagan is here, Gagan Agarwal. We have with us another manufacturing CEO called Vasant Kinney. There is the dean of at least 4 colleges. I'm seeing Dr. Professor Rama Subramaniam also here. There are many others who have come in from Mangalore, Cuttack, and Chennai. So I'm saying that, you know, Jeet Kumar, our chairman from the Chandigarh chapter, is also here. They all are keen on helping you all understand how you can become market ready and industry relevant as you step out of the portals of your college or your university and look for placements in places. Niranjan, now I will leave the floor to you. You will take over. And thank you once again, Niranjan, for accepting with such alacrity when I asked you to see if you could present on color coding. I know of the work that you did maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago when you quit your company after those 40 odd years. And I told myself that this is knowledge, this is intuitive understanding of yours that needs to be shared with our students. Over to you, Niranjan. You can share your screen now. And you can unmute yourself also, Niranjan.
Yeah.
You want help on share screen? There you are.
I think it's open.
Wonderful. You have to go back home. That's right. Go back right up. Yeah. You can pull it up. Yeah.
Make full screen.
There. That's it.
Okay.
Well, I'll mute myself. It's your flow now for the next 45 minutes. Thank you all. I promise you that this is a very rich session, and he has a very rapid fire way of presenting.
Good evening and good morning to all my friends out there, wherever you may be. I love this quote, very old quote. We must look for that which we've been trained not to see. Many of you have seen a smoky chimney, but if you look at this picture very closely, it's a very clever picture of a defunct chimney with a tuft of cloud behind it. So I thought this picture is very pertinent to the quote that I'm sharing, that we must look for that which we have been trained not to see. So the subject today is color coding sustainability and repurposing processes. And before I start my presentation, I thought I'll tell you a story about a king who put some rocks on the road, and he wanted to watch how people would behave when they saw the rocks on the road. Most of them just bypassed the little obstacles which were on the road and carried on with whatever they're doing. But there was one vegetable vendor who offloaded the basket from his head, kept it aside, and removed all the stones from the middle of the road, and then went on with his job. The king noticed and gave him a prize for removing obstacles. The message in this, especially for the young students and all the others, are that we have to become like the vegetable vendor who remove obstacles on ecological front. So the flow line of my color coding is as follows: context of color coding, understanding 4 types of quotient, why color coding in sustainable development, brief criteria, pictorial view of reality, and then I'll be covering home, restaurants, construction, hotels, and rural India. The context is very well known to all of us, with media blaring information on the rate of deforestation, desertification, natural resources, species extinction, etc., etc. I need not elaborate on this. What is important to understand is that we have our current population is 7.3 billion and is likely to be 9 billion by 2050. And if the denominator is large and if the resources are finite and if that's the numerator, then we have challenge. In the process, what happens is somebody will get the omelets and somebody's eggs are going to be broken. And we are seeing many eggs being broken in the migrant crisis that we have in our country right now. You're all aware of the IQ, SQ, and EQ, so I'm not going to focus on that. But I have coined a new terminology called CSQ, or common sense quotient. There are innumerable opportunities for resource efficiency if you apply a common sense quotient. So color coding criteria. Look at the stock of inventory of natural resources. To give an example of the construction industry, it's already reeling under the challenge of getting sand and aggregate. So how should we be looking at some other products which will substitute sand and aggregate? Or how do we ensure that we do not overuse sand and aggregate in construction? Chemical intensity of products. There's so many products with all kinds of synthetic chemicals which are very difficult to undo and cause innumerable harm to the ecosystems, plastic being a case and example. We have to look at the water intensity of many of our products and processes, and how to see how we reduce the water consumption in AC plant and in thermal power plants. If you make a pie chart of water used by industries, thermal power plants constitute 70% of the consumption of water in India. And we also need to look at the carbon intensity of products and processes so that we fight climate change. Colors are used to speed visual search. Right now, a good example is how the government has color coded the red zone and the green zone, which helps in mobility or stopping the mobility from entering the red zone. And the advertising industry uses colors very beautifully in various ads, etc., as you can see from this particular picture. And colors are also used to depict anger or jealousy or happiness. And these pictures are on the screen every day across the world, so I'm not going to elaborate on this. And as Uma rightly said, codifying things helps to simplify. So we have to see how do we codify many processes which have not been codified as yet in sustainable development. Most of you are aware of the coding which has happened in waste sorting. So I'm going to just glide over this. And we are also aware of the coding in the hygiene of large buildings, hospitals, etc. And then you have the International Electrotechnical Commission coding for electrical items. This is a EU standard. And similarly, there's another standard set out by the US. In workplace safety also, there are a number of signs and coding to guide the workers and others to work safely. And very interesting, besides color coding, we have star rating, which was initiated by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, I think somewhere in early 2000. And thanks to this star rating, the country saved 89,126 crores last year through energy efficiency. Moreover, in 2010, I heard that because of BEE, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, the country saved 35,000 megawatt. My guess is this number must have increased to about 70,000 megawatt, if not more. In addition to this, we have the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, which has come out with its own coding for restaurants and hotels to differentiate between veg and non-veg food. And now we come back to water. Water requires a huge amount of coding because the way water is being used, whether it's agriculture or domestic or industry, is very, very wasteful. And we have to note that we get 4,000 BCM of water, billion cubic kilometers, and only 1,123 BCM of water is usable in the country. And here, just as the country has very beautifully started Bureau of Energy Efficiency, they have an opportunity to start Bureau of Water Efficiency so that the data collection happens on a detailed scale. Every industry shares this data in their annual report to show how much water they're consuming and how they're reducing. And this Bureau of Water Efficiency will perhaps lead to the water industry becoming more innovative. We don't find many innovative products in the water domain as against the energy domain, primarily because the cost factor of energy is high and therefore more attention is given to energy rather than to water. And we all know the story of the old crow who survived and got some water to drink, but the same crow will be in trouble today because our water table has gone down to 800 to 1800 feet. And yesterday I was listening to a webinar where I learned from the National Water Commission that 80% of our farming is based on groundwater. I think we are skating on thin ice. And it's very disheartening to see that we in urban areas use 12 liters of drinking quality water for flushing every morning. And here women in rural India struggle for 12 liters of water, going to great depths and drawing water very dangerously. Therefore, it's very important that we learn to optimize water in whichever industry we may be in. So let's start with our home and just look at the flushing need. As per World Health Organization, one person needs 50 liters of water per person per day. And if a person uses the toilets 4 times, he's using 200 liters of water for flushing alone. And what's the solution? The solution have come in the market. And let's look at the figures again. Single lever flushing, cistern capacity is about 12 liters. You flush 4 times, 192 liters. But if you go for dual flushing system, where you use the small button for the small task and the large button for the large task, then the flow is 7 liters and 1.5 liters per flushing cycle, which leads to whole family using only 46 liters of water as opposed to 200 liters of water for flushing. So if you multiply this with about 7 crore urban homes, the savings are enormous. But why has it not happened? Because I don't think so that any mandate has come from the Jal Shakti ministry to ensure that every house goes in for dual flushing system. And just as retrofitting is happening in the implementation of rainwater harvesting, perhaps there must be some rule which should be made to retrofit the old flush tank and make it dual flushing in order to reduce our water consumption. In the globalized economy, we have got used to the winds of other countries, and a lot of people are using toilet paper. It's very important to point out that one toilet roll requires 140 liters of water, 1.3 kilowatt hours of electricity, and 1.5 pounds of wood. And apparently, I was reading a report where in Canada, toilet paper is made with virgin forest. I think this is another bad practice or shameful practice, that on one hand, we have only about 15% of forest cover on a global scale, and we are using such precious wood for C category need. And the solution is so simple, the hygiene faucet on the right. Water conservation at home. We have a population of 100 crore people in this country, and there must be 25 crore homes. And in every home, after lunch or dinner or breakfast, some water is left behind in the glass. If I take a very conservative figure of each home wasting 1 liter of water, the country is wasting 25 crore liters of water in a so-called water-stressed country. And if you just bring about some lifestyle changes and ask people, do you want a small peg of water or a large peg of water? I think it'll bring about humor in the conversation. But besides the humorous part, we are bringing the conversation into the area of scarcity value pricing for water. Unfortunately, water pricing is still very, very low. And therefore, it's not in the mindset of the people, whereas people remember the electric cost of their own home. And the idea of offering small peg or large peg is that I don't have an indicator on my forehead to say how thirsty I am. So when we know that people are going to waste, why don't we create a new design? In Rajasthan, in Churu district, if you go to somebody's house as an ordinary person, they'll not give you water, they'll give you a glass of camel's milk. But if you're a VIP in that house, they will give you a glass of water. So the people in Rajasthan, because of paucity of water for thousands of years, have learned how to live with water and capture the scarcity value through offering of camel milk or water. And since I have been engaged with the hotels for quite some time, I have been suggesting to them to start this practice, and close to about 1,000 restaurants and hotels have started this. But I was very happy to see last year that the Uttar Pradesh government has also made a design that only half a glass of water will be served in the UP assembly in order to avoid unnecessary waste. I was staying in a very small hotel, 8-room hotel in Colombo, and I was very impressed to see how they have made rainwater harvesting interactive. Many of us have done rainwater harvesting, but it is hidden somewhere and nobody knows about it. Whereas this hotel, they had a drainage, number one points to the drainage, and number 2 points to the vertical pipe. And then there were 4 chains, and the chain leads to a recharge pit. So during the daytime, I did not understand what it was, but in the night when it started raining, it was a visual feast to see the water flowing through these 4 chains out there. So my submission to the construction industry, if they are attending this meeting, is how do you bring about such kind of interface with water so that people get to see the pleasure of water harvesting also, and seeing the water flowing into the Mother Earth, and bring architectural excellence in this through innovative processes. Now, waste is wealth, and in the context of COVID, health also. Therefore, let me start with my own home. For about 7 years, the waste from my kitchen went to the home composter, and we got excellent manure, as you see it in the bottom picture on the right. And that manure was used to grow vegetables in the garden, which I'll show you in the next slide. So we bought a grow bag made of coir. Again, coir is a waste. And with that coir bag, we filled up all our manure, and we grew 5 types of greens in it: lettuce, kale, and some other things. Now, we have to keep in mind that climate change is not only going to be fought by energy efficiency. We have to see how do we reduce the food miles that we buy. So if a certain element of our food can be grown in our own garden, or in the gated establishments where the rooftop is absolutely unutilized, and create beautiful gardens out there to grow vegetables covered with solar panels, so that you generate power also and grow vegetables also. So 10 or 15% of the vegetables can come from the own complex, and this will help in reducing the heat from the rooftop also. So instead of putting a high albedo paint, you have a green cover which provides the food. So architects need to see how they can integrate edible and medicinal plants in the landscape as opposed to ornamental landscaping only. Again, this is one innovation whose time has come. You see the picture on the left in the kitchen. There are two buckets under the wash basin. The idea is that when water is used for washing vegetables, that water is not very dirty. That water can be harvested in the pink bucket. And if dal or rice is washed, which has dirt in it, it can be harvested in the blue bucket. So the pink bucket water can be used for potted plants and for swabbing or for flushing, and the water in the blue bucket can be used for potted plants. Now, water harvesting happens only for 3 months in a year because we have 3 months of monsoon, 120 days of rain. Within that 120 days, it rains 10 days very heavily and 10 hours very heavily, but we do not have the capability of capturing that water. But if we bring about this innovative design in our huge housing complexes coming up in millions, look at the daily rainwater harvesting, or rather water harvesting from the kitchen itself, and see how we can focus on demand side management and do the multiplication, and it'll go into millions of gallons of water per day. This is a very simple device called restrictors, water restrictors. It reduces the flow rate from 5 liters to 2.5 liters. This picture is from my house. I don't see why all our stations, we have 7,000 stations across the country. I don't know how many thousands of colleges we have. The colleges have not implemented this. So the colleges teach sustainability, but they're not seen to be practiced over there. I think this lacuna must be filled very, very quickly, because now we are in a water stress situation. And future homes, in every home, there must be a meter. And if there are any gated establishments which do not have meters, they must be in the red category so that they derive a lower rental value. And this information must be in the public domain. Today, all this information is not in the public domain, therefore people don't take these issues seriously. In most of these establishments, people will buy granite marble, spend a lot of money on lipstick and rouge and painting, polishing and tarmac of the road, but not enough money spent on water conservation and water monitoring. We generate 150,000 tons of waste. And according to Central Pollution Control Board, 1,546 square kilometers of land is occupied by landfill sites in periphery of most cities. To my mind, this is a manifestation of our collective inefficiency, and it's a suboptimal use of very expensive real estate in all the cities across the world. And I think we should have a policy enunciated today that in 10 years' time there'll be no landfill site, and therefore industries will work backwards to ensure that become zero waste. And I'm talking from my own experience. When all these laws were not there, the small hotel that I was operating was a zero landfill site entity. We harvested water, we used every piece of waste and converted into something else. I'll give you more examples of that as we go along. And just for your information, if food waste was a country, is the third largest emitter of CO2 emissions. And it's very disheartening to see the amount of food waste which is there in our homes, in our parties, hotels, etc., where is another set of people starve for food. So I took this picture in one of the dhabas I saw in Tamil Nadu, where it said, you can afford to waste it, I can afford it, but the nation can't. Avoid wastage, please. In his own very crude message, at least he's given a good message. I hope all restaurants and hotels put up this kind of message so that even when people go for the buffets, unfortunately now the buffets are dead thanks to COVID, they don't overload the plates. And when you're wasting food, there's a huge amount of embodied water which is being wasted. I'm sure all of you know about it. Vegetables has got the least amount of embodied water. So maybe vegetarianism is the way forward. Some of the things that can be easily reused in the home kitchen. When you make paneer, the whey should not be thrown off. It can be made, it can be put in dal and makes it more nutritious, or you can knead the dough with that. And many people throw the breadcrumbs. The breadcrumbs need not be thrown. You can make the sides of the bread can be made into breadcrumbs. And there is a whole lot of examples in this, but one example came to my mind about cauliflower. I didn't know that cauliflower stem, you can make vegetables out of this. So there's a whole lot of ideas like this on the Wikipedia. So you can go and see that and see what all you can follow so that our homes become zero waste. Now, it's very important to focus on individual social responsibility. According to FAO, Food Agriculture Organization's 2015 report, 194.6 million people are undernourished in India. 51% of them are anemic, and 44% of children are underweight. So what can we do? What is a cost-effective idea to address this malaise? In 2016, in partnership with one NGO, we started Bank of Nutrition, where this NGO set up a nursery to grow moringa, papaya, amla, lemon, and banana saplings. And they started giving to the people in the villages so that they could grow this. All these plants are extremely nutritious. And if you're poor, you either eat rice with chili or roti with chili in the north. But the moment you start growing these vegetables or fruits behind your house, you enhance the nutritional profile of the whole family. And we need to do this on a scale. And even from an urban perspective, if one has a small garden, one can grow this and give it to our domestic helper driver, whoever it is, so that they can enhance their nutritional profile through this low-cost methodology. And if you can do it pan-India through NABARD, that will be a great initiative. Examples of common sense quotient. This girl, her name is Chaya Thakur in Gujarat. She noticed that in the school, the wash basin were a little high where they used to drink the water. So the little kids had to jump to drink water. So she suggested to the school that why don't we put 3 wash basins? So she brought equity in the services of water. So there's a difference between equality and equity. So she brought equity so that even the small kids could reach out the water independently. Similarly, she noticed that the water pumps, only one lady could fill up the water. She connected a longer pipe to that, and then at the end of the pipe, she put 3-4 taps so that 4 or 5 ladies could fill up water at the same time. So she enhanced the efficiency of the collection of water by the ladies. Construction debris is a big problem in our country. Most of our debris goes to fill up lakes and ponds, etc., which has a cascading impact on flooding. And after flooding, we have dengue and malaria. Whereas if industry starts identifying a small area in their respective project to convert their construction debris into a useful construction material, it will help in the wasteful throwing of construction debris here and there. Just to share with all of you, T3 in London was made with completely construction debris some 15-20 years back. My favorite subject is water. I would like to see a day and in every home, there will be a small urinal in the bathroom. Because if there's a small waterless urinal in the bathroom, we further reduce the water intensity of the home. So if WHO is saying we need 135 liters of water per person per day, I would like to see the figure coming down to 70 liters per person per day through these innovative methods and processes and ideas. Similarly, how do we install drip irrigation in the balcony so that water is not wastefully used while providing water to the potted plants? Dual piping has to be mandated and must become the norm for the new cities and for all gated establishment. And wherever space permits, they must retrofit and use their sewage treated water for flushing. To use A category water for a C category need, I think is a criminal offense today. So a lot of work is done on green building during project stages, but I think now the time has come for the builders to work out some very innovative plans on how to bring about green sustainable practices with the people who buy them. So if a manual of this nature is made and handed over along with the keys to the owners, then we are raising the benchmark of the industry and the communities around. So let me give you examples of hotel industry and how water can be optimized there. In the 1970s, there were two types of room, twin bedroom and double bedroom. So if you went to a hotel alone, you got the twin bedroom, therefore you slept in your bed and the other bed was not touched and the bed sheet was not washed. But today, the concept of queen size bed has come instead of the twin bed. So what happens is, as a single occupancy, you're still using your 3.5 feet space, and the next morning the whole bed sheet is completely washed, even the clean side. So many of you might have done Six Sigma, and Six Sigma is all about process analysis. So how do we do more of process analysis and move from Six Sigma to eco design? Because eco design also looks at where is the water coming from, what depth it's coming from, what is the so-called the taint value or the carbon value of the water. That is not being talked about. How do we mainstream this? And in hotels across the world, by and large, the occupancy is 70%. So can you see a huge waste of water by design intent? This needs to change. The other thing is bathtubs. Studies have revealed that only 5% of the bathtubs are used, yet most hotels have bathtubs in all the rooms, which is a capex waste and operational waste. When there's a financial crisis in businesses, business is extremely good in cutting cost and ensuring that remain healthy and fit. So how do we apply this kind of mindset to natural resources also, knowing that all resources are drying up, and therefore not make oversized rooms? I was in Japan in 2001 and I saw their rooms were very small, 250 to 300 square feet. In India, we made rooms which are between 300 to 450 square feet. And this enhances the water intensity, the sand intensity, and what have you. And of course, air conditioning intensity. So if we start optimizing and use all resources optimally, we have an opportunity of saving cost on a national basis. Way back in 1988, I learned that spent cooking oil can be converted into soap, and we converted into soap. And then I moved to mainland India, and then we had larger quantities of spent cooking oil, and we started a pilot with Indian Railways in 2002 to run it as a biodiesel. You'll be happy to know that a few years back, the FSSAI has mandated that all restaurants and chains like the QSR chain, quick service restaurant chains, have to give their spent cooking oil to certified recyclers. I saw this truck in Mumbai last year. I was very happy to see that it's been collected, aggregated, and being converted into biodiesel for use by light commercial vehicles and autos, etc. And the potential for us in the country is 250,000 tons per annum. Each hotel, depending on its size, generates between 300 to 500 kgs of food waste every day. Earlier, this used to go to the landfill site. Even today, most of the hotels are sending it to landfill sites. But few chains have started now installing biogas, and this biogas generated from the food waste is used in the kitchen. So we are working to a circular economy in a minuscule way, but the need is to do it at a faster pace so that another 5 years' time, we should not have no landfill site. In the kitchen, when you use a LPG gas, a lot of heat is generated. And because you have extra heat, the exhaust hoods are working overtime, and that is energy intensive. Whereas if you use radiant cooking system, as shown in this picture, it reduces the consumption of gas by about 47%. And that will reduce the energy consumption also, and it's smokeless, odorless, and safe to use. And you all know that we love to eat tandoori food, but to make the tandoori food requires charcoal, and charcoal comes from wood. The charcoal should be banned in all the hotels, and this company has come out with a tandoor which works with radiant heating process. I'll be amiss if I do not focus my attention on the villages, 6 lakh villages of India. We have 300 million cattle, and the cattle population produces 1.3 billion tons of manure. And this manure is suboptimally utilized for making cow dung cake for cooking, with its negative health impacts. And you must have seen in most villages, there's piled high all over the roadside and leads to E. coli problem and water contamination. So what can be done with this to convert this into an opportunity? I'm so happy that Mahatma Gandhi started the self-reliant movement in 1940s, and now Atmanirbhar has come. And if we can convert, we can convert the manure into biogas by creating new entrepreneurs in villages who will set up small biogas plants and provide biogas to villages, and the biogas can further be converted into bio-CNG, which can be used for local vehicles, and the bio-CNG can be converted into liquid CO2, and the liquid CO2 can be converted into dry ice at minus 71 degrees centigrade. And if we have dry ice in abundance, then we can improve our cold chain and can really help the farmers to double the income in next 2-3 years by improving on their water management skills, improving soil fertility, because the slurry from the biogas is very good for rejuvenating the soil. So here we have an opportunity of working on a national basis towards a regenerative economy. The current economy is very, very brown in nature. So, ladies and gentlemen, your future is created by what you do today, not tomorrow. Or I would say all these things should have started yesterday. So tasks for the students. The students need to conduct water, energy, waste audit in their respective homes. Measure the flow rate, watts and weight respectively. Engage with the family members to convince them to bring about change. They'll get a taste of how difficult it is to create policies and to bring about legislation at the smallest unit of the organization called home. Implement rainwater harvesting. It's very unfortunate that out of 19 lakh homes, only 1 lakh homes have implemented rainwater harvesting in Bangalore. Do not forget, drops of water make an ocean. So please make it a habit to offer small peg or large peg of water. Humor intended. Throw a pebble, create ripples of good practice far and wide. When new ideas come, yes, they are challenging to implement it, but do implement it in your home, neighborhood, and then it will scale up. And since you are talking about coding, you can create a home coding and pass it to Prem Jain Memorial Trust, and we will share it with everybody else in the country. So thank you very much. And before I end, I'd like to quote Paul Hawken, who has written a book called The Ecology of Commerce. And in his book, he mentioned in 1994, he said, the sustainable development practices that we are following currently are akin to bailing out the Titanic with a teaspoon. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Niranjan. Let me get to Umar Shankar. You saw that about 1/2 of what he presented was on coding and what we can do with standards, protocols, and procedures. And then he went into solutions as deeply, passionately as Niranjan does every time. How do you tell these young professionals who are listening to us on how you bring this connect between the solutions and the coding? What would your take be on that, Umar?
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Hariharan. So let me just answer that question of how does this go about actually on the field? So if you talk of, for example, it could be a building. So it starts with, if it is a commercial building, then like a large hotel or a large office complex, then they will have something called building management system. And this data, then data from this building management system, which is connecting related to your energy or your water, all this needs to be taken on a time series basis. So it should be on a time series basis. The data should be taken. And then what is the end use? The relating factors. So the relating factors are all related to occupancy of the building, and also the weather. So all this needs to be taken together, and then a data analysis needs to be done at how well are you performing on a time series basis. For example, every hour of the day, how are you doing in terms of energy efficiency given the occupancy and the weather outside? And similarly, you can find out and benchmark it, that are you doing good or bad? And when it comes to industries, we can also say that, for example, I have done this, and Mr. Padmanabhan had asked a similar question in the Q&A. So how do we do it actually in the industry? So we start in the industry by collecting data from the control systems or the sensors, put all the flow meters together, get it to a automation system like Rockwell automation system. And from there, we pull it out, pull this data out into your IT system, the servers. And when we do that, we get the information there, and then we can code it for all the algorithms, rules on the application. It could be a .NET platform, it could be a Java platform, and even data analysis. There are a lot of data analysis tools and applications, Tableau, Click.
Yeah. Okay. One of the questions that is obvious, even from the first spell that you spoke, you talked about software platforms. How does one pick the right software platform for a building is one of the questions that these students will have in their minds. Yes, Uma? Are you there? Or have I lost you? Well, he doesn't seem to be there for the moment. You must have lost him. If you're hearing us, Umashankar, what I would request is that you could leave and return. Sometimes bandwidth plays havoc with all of us. Niranjan, to you, there's this person called Prem Bajaj who makes a comment. He says, Mother, you must have read it on the chat box. Have you, Niranjan?
Yes, I'm hearing.
Yeah, Mother Nature, the issue is that sustainability is at complete odds with shareholder expectations. The entire suffering of the marketplace, he says, is thanks to the lack of regard from these shareholders to contribute to the total cost of operation in cost for the sake of short-term profits. Especially, it makes sense, Niranjan, especially in the context of a five-star hotel. You know how people talk about responsible luxury and such, and they don't want to make any compromise on what is offered as luxury. How do you therefore respond to this question from Prem Bajaj?
In the beginning, your question was warped. Can you repeat the question, please?
No, it's there on the chat box. Okay. You haven't seen it?
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay. Shareholders only want to know how much they have got as dividend. If you talk to them about any additional cost on operations in order to make some building green or some such thing, they say no to it. The board turns it down. I remember conversations with, just as Padu will recount, conversations with the chairman of the ITC Hotels chain. His first thing was, is it going to impact on cost? So why should I do anything that is going to make it difficult for my customer, the five-star hotel customer? How do you respond to that?
So I think we have moved a long way since those days when customers asked this, because today the resource challenges are staring at our face, and the trick lies in doing things intelligently. Way back in the 1780s, the urinal used to run 24/7, and then came the sensors, and after the sensors came the waterless urinals. So as long as you give them their services without hindering them or creating dissonance in the service design, they are all appreciative of these issues. And today, investors who put big money into industries are looking for these features and not just looking for return on investment of their capital. So I think this question perhaps was relevant 15 years back, but today I think things have changed and people are appreciative of the changes that are being made. Moreover, I showed the example of the small peg, large peg, and how hotels have introduced it. If you communicate properly, 90% of the people will understand what you're saying is right and will have a buy-in. So in the communication
Sure.
put up by two chains, they very
Sure.
clearly put it why they are offering only half a glass. Not that they're hindering you from taking the full glass, but because of the water problem. It's
I got
unfortunate that people have to be guided to that extent even today on water.
I got that. Okay, back to you, Umashankar. Are you there now? Can you hear us?
Yeah.
A question from Jeet Kumar Gupta. Can you provide, okay, sorry. He says, can you provide specific examples of how real time, no, that's Padu. I'm so sorry. Okay. Can national...
The real-time example.
Yeah, I think you responded
Dr.
to that.
Hariharan, just let me answer. Yeah. So with the boiler example, as I said, we could color code. That is, we could say which performance is doing at 80% and above, which is doing at 50%. And we could do it across 10 factories and then find out. And then it was very relatively easy to identify and then pull up those which are really doing bad. Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of financial savings, what would that have meant for the company?
Yeah.
To give them
so for one example, what we had was what are the corrective actions taken, which Mr. Padmanabhan was saying. So we found that oil-fired boiler, we had problems related to combustion, which we were able to identify through IoT and data analytics, which is the oxygen level was not within the prescribed limit of 2 to 5%. So we found that, and then there was a control change, that is the PID controller of the Forbes Marshall boiler. So the controller had to be fine-tuned. Whatever the algorithm or the PLC ladder logic programming was there, the constants had to be changed, and then it started working pretty well. So we were able to maintain the oxygen level in the stack between 2 to 5%, number one. Number two is we found a lot of problems in one boiler where we had stack temperature was more than 200 degrees Celsius. That it shows that there is incomplete combustion and there is a huge amount of air going out. That is in terms of high temperature, heat going out through the stack. And that is where we found out that this was because the boiler tubes were all foul. There was fouling and there was soot deposition in that, and that was what the oil-fired boiler. So we asked for regular cleaning every week of the boiler tubes. They were able to bring it down to less than 200, around 200 degrees Celsius stack temperature, and a huge amount of savings were there. So what they were doing for maybe 6 months or 3 months, they were able to do it every week during a shutdown.
Okay.
And the performance.
Yeah. To all of you faculty and students out there, whether you're from departments of architecture or of engineering, what he just now spoke of might sound a little obtuse, a little difficult to understand. And you might even very well ask yourself, hey, why am I wanting to learn this, as I said earlier? The point is this: no matter what you do as a professional, you have to understand buildings are living. You need to understand how it's going to work beyond that initial cost of construction itself. You heard Niranjan Khatri speak about embodied water and vegetables. But then if you spoke about embodied water of a building and you mapped what that quantum of water is to put up, let us say, a 1 lakh square feet apartment structure, you will then realize that the quantum of water spent then to the quantum of water that you spend every month and every year on that building is going to be phenomenal. And that is where O&M makes a difference. And that is where measuring and mapping and managing, as Umashankar has emphasized, is important for you to learn, because you are the future of such building management practices. And that is why we are here to try and see how we can sensitize you to it. Okay, there is one question from Jay Shah. It's like, he says, it's a comment, it's like all vehicles have a pollution check. Buildings should also have such certificates, helping everyone understand how much pollution or carbon footprint is generated by the building annually. And so you can go in for certifications from various agencies in order to see that we build a sustainable future. Niranjan or Uma, who would want to respond to that question from Jay Shah, or observation from Jay Shah?
He's saying that there must be a coding...
Sort of an audit every year.
Sorry?
Sort of an audit every year of the buildings. For example, if a company is building, is told to, mandated, let us say, or told to file a water return, like you file an income tax return.
Yeah.
How does that work? And how, can we get the government to do something like this in the next, say, 2 to 5 years is one question. Or can that be voluntarily done, as Umar Shankar has been saying, with whatever he advises his clients?
I think
Yeah,
there is sorry. Okay, go ahead, Umar Shankar.
Yeah, I'll just cite one example for this. So in the European Union, they have come out with something called an Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. And here we can color code, the buildings are color coded, all the properties in Europe are color coded from A to F. And that color coding helps to understand how are you performing from A to G rather. And you can see whether you are performing 90 plus if it is A. If you are between 80 and 90 in terms of percentage for energy efficiency, then it is B, and so on and so forth. So there is already a government directive which is there. It's called the European Energy Performance of Building Directive. Similarly, there is one for appliance in Europe, and there is one for vehicles also. So for all the vehicles you buy, also they have something called a vehicles directive for that. And those are things which are already there in European Union right now. That is, and then the audits are done periodically. It could be every 2 years or every 3 years. And whenever you're going to buy a house in Europe, for example, are you going to rent a house, then you will go with this certificate also. The property developer, everyone has to show the certificate for the energy performance building. Right. And accordingly, the rents and so on and so forth also will be incentivized.
You have spent a good 2 or 2.5 minutes telling us about Europe. I know that even if you are as soft and gentle when you speak, you can be terribly caustic on policy decisions that are not made right in India. Why is it that such directions are not taken in this country? What is your take on that? I mean, this is not to, batter or to bash anybody, but to see where things go wrong, that the government doesn't act on it or industry doesn't act on it.
Dr. Khatri, you want to answer this, Mr. Khatri?
I think we already have, I mean, taking a cue from what Umar Shankar said, we have something called ECBC in the country, Electricity Conservation Building Code, which sets certain standards for the quantum of energy that they'll use. And with regards to the second question, Hari, we are very rich in laws in our country, but unfortunately, the laws are not being implemented on the ground. A case and example is that of rainwater harvesting in Bangalore. It's mandated since 2016, and only 1 lakh homes have implemented it out of some 19 lakh homes.
Since you brought about this water harvesting, one of the attendees, Prem Bajaj, is saying, interesting that water harvesting at home is being discussed, but a challenging task for residential complexes. Hear him out. Is challenging, more challenging than it is for, shall we say, commercial buildings. He says, what does he say? But it's more easily managed in hotels and food service and such agencies where a more standard format of work and discipline is followed. I don't believe so. Umar Shankar, do you agree with Prem?
Sir, hear you properly. Can you just repeat that?
No, if you see that on the chat box from Prem Bajaj, he's saying that in apartments it's far more difficult to install rainwater, simple things like rainwater harvesting practices. Do you agree with him?
No. It is definitely possible, and this is being done quite a lot also in Bangalore and in many places. So rainwater harvesting, there are agencies which are there and they will be able to help it. It's all about the association of the buildings coming together and saying, yes, let's do this. Let's ensure that this rainwater harvesting is.
Prem, let me also respond to this. Just now, there is a team of professionals who are working on an apartment complex which has 1,080 flats. Their daily water requirement is in the region of about 6.5 lakh liters a day, 650,000 liters a day. 4 months ago, they came to me and said, look, this is what the demand is today. What do you think we can do about it? I won't go into detail just now because this is not the forum for it, but I can tell you that we have brought it to a point where they will not need top up water every day, imported or taken from their bore wells, of any more than 70,000 liters. That's a saving or a drop in freshwater demand of 90%. Now, how that has been done and how did the flat owners accept that is another story, not to be discussed here, as I said. Coming back to rainwater harvesting systems alone, it's completely non-invasive, and it does not intrude on anything that you do in your life. It does not compromise comfort, convenience, luxury. It doesn't, mar the facade of your buildings. Nothing at all, and it costs very little. If you were to map the capital cost that you spend, the amount of money that you spend in order to get a rainwater harvesting system structure installed in your building, and compare that with the cost of water that you buy it. If you are from Bombay, as I assume you are, Pray, I think you're buying water at something like 50 or 55 rupees per 1,000 liters. In Bangalore, we buy at 150 rupees to 250 rupees if it's tanker water. We get Kaveri water at about 80 to 90 rupees per 1,000 liters. If you did a basic math, you will find that you get your money back in less than a year and a half of what you spend. Umar Shankar will tell you more, Niranjan will tell you more. The important thing is this. You can admit, if you like, all of you, and I'm talking to you as students, you can admit that I don't know what the solutions are. And I can tell you it is not for want of solutions that these things are not happening. It is because somewhere you don't know how to connect with the solution providers, or you do not believe that such solutions can be workable for you. What would you do to that, Umar Shankar, in order to break this behavior mindset in all of us as water consumers or as energy consumers?
Yeah, especially in apartment complexes, what we have seen is biggest obstacle, and it has been pointed out in the chat box as well, is about the association getting together. And what we have seen in large apartment complexes across India, so there is no consensus on doing these green initiatives. Right. We have also, I have personally come across one of those in Whitefield in Bangalore, where the energy bill alone for the common areas was close to 10 crores per year. It was a large apartment complex. And right. There was no data available, no energy meters, no analysis being done where it is being spent. But all of them were happily spending a huge amount of maintenance bills, which was, it was so close to 10 crores per year. So there's a huge opportunity there, but there is no action being done. That's what we are able to see. There are definitely, and data is one thing which will empower all stakeholders to take action. And what we need to work on is data analysis.
Absolutely. And those of you who are listening to this, if you have any questions on this, please post them at contact@premjainmemorialtrust.com. And we'll come back to you with very specific answers which will make investments viable. Dr. S.P. Anchuri has a question. I don't know who wants to take it. Let me read this. Niranjan, if you're listening, I'm sure Uma is reading it. It's on the Q&A. Color coding is a complex subject. As an architect, I love the idea. And then he says it has the power to subliminally convey values and stories for custodians or for users. Being an architect, I'm a big admirer of it. I find one of the problems with any color coding scheme is that the more things you need to code, the harder it gets to choose distinct colors. Where do you draw a line? He wants to know. Any of you can answer this.
I think on the subject of water, I think we need to have a context on the availability of water. At the risk of being a parrot, in 1947, we had 6 lakh liters of water per person per annum, and the water table was at a depth of 30 feet, and the population was 35 crores. Today, we are imagining something like 1,03,000 liters of water. Hello?
Sorry, Niranjan, the question is,
yes.
How many colors can you have? At a certain point, you have to draw a line, right? You can't have, the multiple color schemes that we have in order to see that we are able to alert. That is his question. Where do you draw the line on the numbers of colors that you use for coding?
The limit is 5 to 6 colors is what we can see, right from red to green.
Okay.
So it's around 5 to 6 color codings.
Okay.
I think that those bands are good enough for stakeholders to understand where do you lie in performance, and then what is the potential for improvement.
Okay.
If that is the limit as cited by Umar Shankar, then we must perhaps think of another way of creating symbols which also help in the so-called color coding concept. like B has created a star system. Let's create some
Yes.
symbols in particular area to overcome the limit that Uma has cited.
Right. Okay. Okay. Uh, Gopal Krishna Bhatt has this about starting from home is a great idea. Biogas really makes sense. We can minimize wet waste disposal. Anyone wants to respond? Uma Shankar, any case studies or experience that you had with treating wet waste and making either energy or biogas out of it?
Yeah, yeah. We have seen
Compost.
that mostly in industries where the canteen waste has been used. Even in hotels,
Yep.
there have been numerous cases where the wet waste has been used for biogas. And that's a pretty cost effective. It's not only environmental friendly, but very cost effective.
Absolutely.
Dr. Khatri can inform about the hotel experience. But in terms of industries, also in terms of canteens being using for biogas, it's a very cost-effective measure.
Yeah, students, my add to what Uma Shankar just now stated is this: if you were to ask your mother as to how much as vegetables she buys, if you are a family of 4, you will find that it averages to about 1 kg a day of various vegetables. 7 kilos or say 30 kilos a month, 7 kilos a week or 30 kilos a month. Now, as waste that goes out, typically as a rule of thumb, if you were to keep, let's say, about 200 grams to a person, if you are a frugal home like Niranjan's is, it'll be much less. But if you are somebody who is a little proliferate in nature, you might have, let us say, 200 to 250 grams to a person to a day. That's it. And that comes out of all waste. I mean, when I'm talking of waste, I'm talking, all kinds of waste. There are 7 types of waste if you want to look at India. Niranjan mentioned Japan somewhere. They classify in their cities and in their districts of cities, 21 types of waste. And they do a very, very wonderful system of waste management. Is that you will have, if you have, let's say, 100 flats in your apartment, and you are, say, 400 people, multiply that by 200 grams, and that will divide it by 1,000, and you will get the number of kilos of wet waste a day. If you have anything over, let's say, 500 kilos, that is, you are 1,000 flats in your apartment or whatever community you live in, then I know that you can explore other possibilities of converting that to biogas instead of just staying at compost itself, which you can use for your plants and such. So there are multiple ways of doing it. Like another person points out, like Deep Kumar Gupta points out, many of these things can't work at one home level. It can work, to a point, but the point is that if you're in a community, it works far more effectively. Any other questions that you see, Uma Shankar, that can be taken up?
Yeah. I see one from Mr. Afratain.
Yes.
The biggest is not writing laws, but the mindset. I believe, what is your approach on influencing and changing mindsets?
Right.
There have been gradual changes. But for example, if we come back to buildings, what we need is, we have all these portals, for example, the residential complexes, we have the magic floor, we have the common floor, we have 99 acres and so on and so forth. So all of them, when they are listing their properties, if like what Mr. Khatri said, if we can have a clear guidance for color coding of all these properties, those themselves will drive both the building association as well as the developers themselves to have the best of the green homes to attract the tenants. So we need to have some kind of a guidance information which is available right now. The only information what you get in these is about price and certain features of the building, like what he said about Italian tiles and so on and so forth. But we need to look at energy and water also and have that clearly communicated.
That's right.
Maybe voluntary and not government.
Sure.
Yes.
To all of you, the president of the Indian Plumbing Association, B.O. Prasanna Kumar, has this to offer to all of his students. To conserve rainwater, he says, number 1, connect all rooftop rainwater pipes to a sump or the tank with some basic carbon filters and such things. Check the website and you'll find multiple people in your city who can come and offer you solutions. In any city, trust me on this, at least in the first 50 cities in India. The second suggestion he makes is that where there is non-rooftop water, surface water that is from the street and road and such things in your neighborhood, you can see that you drive that to either percolation pits or to the borewell in order that you recharge the groundwater system in your micro region. There's another question. Anything else that you see, Uma, that we can take up? We've got another 6 minutes to go. Shanmugam says, although some technical aspects for my head, and I suspect that most of it came from Uma Shankar, by and large, it was interesting to listen to knowledgeable speakers, particularly into rainwater harvesting. Best wishes, says Colonel Ranganathan. Biogas has been around for quite long. What prevents its asks Kaustubh Das, Professor Kaustubh Das from Cuttack University in Cuttack. You want to answer that question, Uma Shankar? Biogas has been around for quite long.
Yeah, I responded there. I said
You did.
In urban
Right.
areas, definitely space is a constraint. And in rural areas, what we have seen from our own experience or in any other, the maintenance part of these biogas systems is what is a problem. There is a need for, skilled people on biogas itself. And on skills training, Mr. Khatri is talking about it. Skills training for biogas improvement.
Sure. To Jeet Kumar Gupta, you said that it's not too viable at the level of one house. Gopal Krishna Bhatt from Ahmedabad says, we are two people, we do about 30 minutes of a single burner burning, and we use it for milk heating and rice making. We also compost onion skin, egg shells, and such. Well, it's possible. And we know that it's possible even to do it at these levels. Question is, most often, where is that solution provider, even if my intent is high? Anyone wants to answer that question? Between the two of you, we got another 5 minutes to go.
Hari, the first part of your question got distorted.
No, Mike, it's very, Uma, if you have heard me, you can respond and I'll ask Niranjan next.
Yeah, you can ask Mr. Niranjan.
Okay.
Yes.
Niranjan, see, the thing is this, most often, there are, I would say, a third of people are willing to execute these things, but they don't know where to find a solution provider. So what should they do?
Start experimenting at home. I do a lot of experimentation all the time, and there's a lot of information in the public domain too.
Okay. Savita Ullavi says, it'll be great, Uma Shankar, for you. It'll be great if you can plan one webinar purely on data analytics. I agree with you, Savita. In fact, we have indeed got one such presentation coming up from Uma Shankar one of these weeks. The following one, that is on, this is every alternate Thursday, as you know, and the next one is coming up on July 23rd, when we have another interesting resource professional who is going to present on circular thinking in construction. Very interesting one. This is also, by the way, a person who is among probably the first 5 or 6 carbon consultants in India today. And on July 30, we have another one coming up on the Prem Jain Colloquium, while the July 23rd one, of course, is the Living Building series itself that comes under the larger umbrella of Green No at the Prem Jain Memorial Trust. So you will have this on July 23rd. Someday soon, we will get Uma Shankar back here.
Yeah, surely we'll have a presentation on data analytics.
Okay, it's 3 minutes. Anything, Uma Shankar, that I have missed out from the things that have been raised by the listeners? Okay, Gopal Krishna Bhatt says in multi-story buildings, say 5 to 2 people can have biogas. So on. That is, there are multiple ways of working out the process for such solution providing. I guess it's to do first with intent, especially for people like Prem Bajaj. And like Jeet Kumar Gupta says, it has to work. It will work much better, shall we say, when it's a collective, when you are more people together. The more your consumption is, the more effective your investment proposition is. And of course, the natural resource effectiveness is for able. Any last words from the both of you? 1 or 2 sentences as a message to the students?
Yeah, what I have seen from my own experience is having the right information, especially on the operational front of all the equipments, buildings, assets, wherever we have been, both which are related to energy and water or environment, there needs to be information made available to the stakeholders. And that is what we lack. We only get a bill at the end of the month. Okay, this is what is your electricity, this is what is your water. And we are having a handicap in terms of taking actions. So I believe the new technologies which are coming up, IoT and data analytics, definitely will come for buildings as well as for industries for improving the energy efficiency and water consumption.
Got it. Niranjan, one or two lines?
Brief point. In the haze of COVID, we somehow have relegated climate change and water issues to the background, and climate change has not disappeared. And the synergistic effect of climate change and water shortage will be far more severe than COVID.
Great. Thank you so much. That's it. It's 5:29. I think it's time to depart. Thank you all of you who have stayed on. We look forward to meeting you again 2 Thursdays from now. Thank you, the backend team, Devashish and others, Devaruti and Tanya for being here. Thank you, Pal Jain also for having made these things happen. That's it for the day. Thank you once again, Vashankar and Niranjan for being here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.